So I hope you enjoyed the first of the two parts of the Swiss digital asset series. This is the second part. We are going to pick it up with discussing a little bit more about DeFi, talking a little bit about what makes Switzerland special, the process by which digital asset companies come to Switzerland and what they look at. You're talking to two attorneys who do a lot of these projects. So obviously, if you're looking for an attorney for the projects, I'm not shilling for them, but hey, I mean, I put them on a podcast, so why wouldn't you? But at any rate, hope you enjoy the second of two episodes. Then with that, I bring you Lars Schlichting and Olivier Depierre. Part 2 of 2. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome to The Encrypted Economy, a podcast exploring the business, laws, regulation, security, and technologies relating to digital assets and data. I am Eric Hess, founder of Hess Legal Counsel, and your host. Join me on this journey, exploring the reach of these transformative technologies. So this is the second part of our coverage of digital assets in Switzerland and the regulatory frameworks and definitional aspects and legal considerations. In this episode, we're going to cover DeFi, the regulatory framework for DeFi, and then start talking about the specific legal considerations for digital asset businesses in Switzerland. So, Lars and Olivier, welcome back. In this case, the back means that Olivier was able to get coffee. But Lars, if you could, Lars, you could start off describing the way that FINMA defines DeFi and how DeFi is actually regulated in Switzerland.
Look, I think that a little bit over the world, the regulator have understood now that most, if not all, of the DeFi platform that we have, they're not really decentralized. That there still is some backdoor or some way to influence the smart contract who is doing the transaction. So when you want to go to FINMA with a DeFi project, of course, your first reaction will be, hey, FINMA, is decentralized? It's fully decentralized. I don't control anything, and therefore I don't need any authorization. And if you go to FINMA, they will start to challenge you, and they will ask you, yes, then if you're truly decentralized, tell me, how are you gaining money out of it? And if you reply, well, I get a fee, then they say, got you, because if you get a fee, you have a way to get money out of the protocol, and so you control the protocol because you can decide how much fee you will get paid from this transaction. So that's to say that for FINMA, a decentralized application must be really completely decentralized. So you don't need to have any control about the smart contract. So if everything goes wrong and you have millions locked into the smart contract, it's decentralized. You can do anything. You cannot take it out. There is not a backdoor where you can, in a way or the other, take out the assets. So it's now very difficult to demonstrate that you're truly decentralized. And if you are not, then you need an authorization. Then FINMA will start to say, oh, you need the money laundering. You need to be registered as a self-regulated body. And if you do custody, then if you DeFi, you don't have custody at least. But if you touch securities, you need an authorization. And you need the distributed ledger technology authorization, which is now foreseen in the law. So that's also why DeFi is starting to get in place in Switzerland. But all the DeFi projects I know of, they're not using securities, and they are working to get this authorization in order to offer securities token also on their platform.
I think it's very important to say that from a Swiss perspective, as regards everything that is new, the FINMA applies always two big principles. It's first of all, it's neutrality from a technological aspect. They're completely neutral technology. It doesn't have any impact on their regulatory process, and they apply this principle of same risk, same rules. It's whatever you do, if we consider that you qualify as this, we are gonna, like in trust business, for example, pierce the veil of incorporation. We're gonna go through what you pretend you are, and we're gonna apply the legislation as it should be applied if you were regulated as you should be. Like if FINMA considers you are collective investment schemes, then they will try to find somebody that was liable to file a request of collective investment scheme, for example. So and other than that, I totally agree with what Lars said, and I said it in the beginning. Nobody can be truly centralized in the course that I teach in engineering university. I'm trying to find all the triggers possible to make you fall into, if there is an email, who reads the email, if it's not only chatbots, if there is not AI also implied, there is always somebody that is liable. And for Uniswap, for example, they register a license, un brevet, je sais plus comment on dit en anglais, for example, for the V3. So there is an entity, like for MakerDAO, there is a foundation. So there are entities that you could try to, from the legal perspective, from the state perspective, you can try to make people be liable for what they do, even if they're director of a company or member or council of a foundation, even though you're telling them there is a community that improves the smart contracts. I think regulators still don't want to accept that idea. It's something that is counter-systemic, and they really don't like that idea. And as long as true decentralization is not proven to be true, there is potentially no escape at some point to falling into supervision somehow. But let's see what's going to happen in the future.
But I guess the question is like, do DeFi protocols register through foundations or separate entities that are acting pursuant to authority delegated to them? Well, they wouldn't be doing it through foundations per se. They would be doing it through entities that through which the authority was delegated.
Maker did that for the DAI. For the DAI, a Maker did a foundation for the DAI. Now I'm not very. I don't know. I don't know if Lars knows how our Uniswap, SushiSwap, maybe many other DeFi protocols, how are they truly organized? They're organized basically. We know what they say they are, and we know there is also a legal qualification that is pending on that, on DAO, on decentralized autonomous organizations. That's why they pretend to be. In Swiss law, it might fall into the category of what we call the simple company. Do you know how we say société simple in English, Lars?
It's a simple partnership.
Simple partnership, yeah. So they could fall in that category, although there might be some differences. But to come back to your point, I don't know how. Maybe Lars, you know how. Did you find any other legal qualification of some DeFi protocols on other law than Swiss law, or how are they viewed?
Honestly, I don't think that DeFi should be qualified in the law, because the law should qualify the activity which is done by the platform. So if I'm issuing a token on the primary market, or if I'm offering a secondary market only for payment token or for utility token, or also for security tokens, then the law changes. Now,
but they do qualify the financial service that applies on DeFi, but they cannot find somebody that's liable.
Yes, because I mean, if you look at the DeFi platform like Uniswap, SushiSwap, etc., the problem is exactly that. Now, what we were saying before, there is no. I mean, the regulator doesn't know who is behind it and doesn't know if he's competent. He will say, "Oh, it's not a Swiss guy, so I'm not doing anything," and the SEC could say, "Oh, it's not a US person, so I'm not doing anything." On the other side, think about it. If you want to have a DeFi platform, you need a hosting. Who is signing the agreement with the hosting provider? It's not the DAO. The DAO cannot sign such an agreement. So there is someone who is doing something for the DeFi platform. So is this still decentralized? If I am paying for the hosting provider of a decentralized platform. So in my opinion, if the platform is really, truly decentralized, and there are few, but they are, then the answer is yes. Even if there is even a company who is running this platform, but is running it completely decentralized, then it should be recognized as completely decentralized. But it must be completely decentralized. If I have even the slightest way to influence the smart contract, then it's not decentralized anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And we have to stay agnostic from our status of attorneys in this situation and think out of the box. And I totally agree that also there are different categories of DeFi. We now start to speak about DeFi 3.0, which is faster, which is easily accessible. But I totally agree. There might always be some kind of accounting, especially, for example, for the very small part of the fees, or the so-called gas in the normal Ethereum environment, for example. There is always some small parts of the transaction fees that is not distributed to all the participants, because that's the goal of DeFi. That has to be feed into some kind of wallet to spend the electricity costs of the maintenance of the servers. I totally agree that single point of entry into the administrative world is a centralized aspect. So totally agree with you, Lars. And I don't see how you can figure out how to have that accounting part, that accounting problem of feeding the cost of your administrative system, websites and everything related to it, or communication or marketing or visualization of the websites without somebody having the control.
Well, I'll
be a centralist.
I'll interject on that for a little bit, but then we'll circle it back to FINMA's interpretation. But essentially, with DeFi, first of all, if you look at decentralization like a perfect end state, I'm not even sure the perfect end state is the perfect end state. Like you could always, but in terms of identifying those central parties, you have delegated entities that can fulfill these tasks. You can have adjacent entities that fulfill these tasks. That doesn't necessarily impact the underlying DAO structure per se. Now, that's more theoretical, since in a lot of cases, most entities don't have honestly, the discipline to do that, right? Most DAOs are neither decentralized nor autonomous. They're just O's, right? But it is possible to create a DeFi structure where you do achieve all those things. And I would say for those, if they get huge, then maybe we have to contemplate it, but there will be a role for both. You can, instead of giving administrative access to a DeFi protocol to upgrade, you could just shut it down and then spin up another one. So you never do an upgrade. So it's like, you truly can achieve that absolute complete decentralization, and you can delegate authority to specific entities. So oftentimes when you say like, who's you, right? Like, well, who's the you sending the email, or who's the you paying the fee? All that can be delegated away. And those functions themselves don't necessarily make up the DeFi protocol or the DAO. Having said that, does now a regulator say, okay, well, that's a separate entity doing a separate piece, but maybe that little piece needs to be regulated as something. That's sort of the debate that's going on with the SEC, trying to hit that level of abstraction. But I'll end after this. But I think technology will have a way of abstracting away the different layers faster than the regulators can catch up with those layers of abstraction. What guidance has FINMA provided with regards to DeFi, whether there's specific risks or ways that they're looking at DeFi particularly?
Look, there is a report of the Federal Council, again, dated 2018, which describes very well what we can do with blockchain technology, especially in the financial market. And in this report, the Federal Council make a difference of all the kind of platform that we can have, from the decentralized to the peer-to-peer to the DeFi. And the Federal Council state that only if you are really peer-to-peer, it says no regulation applies. And then for the other cases, you have to comply with the regulation. And the regulation, as we said before, is for security token this distributed ledger technology authorization, which is now in the Swiss legislation. And if you are doing non-security token, you have then at least to have the money laundering registration to a self-regulated body. So that's it. You have to decide which part you want to be, security or non-security, and then go for the authorization request.
But then again, so yeah, that's perfectly true. Also, if you go on the FINMA website, there is a page on decentralized finance. But what is funny is on that page, on the same subtitle, Finance décentralisée, decentralized finance, they start to describe it, and they start to explain that they go to substance over form, they go to what principles they say, technology neutrality. They are neutral from a technological point of view, and they apply same risk to same rules. And then just the line below is FINMA announcing that they have given 2 authorization for 2 DLT trading facility, which is completely centralized. So that has nothing to do with the DeFi subject on the same article on the same page. And I think that really shows that the states do not like that idea, do not want to understand the so-called Satoshi vision, not talking about Satoshi vision, the new the fork of Bitcoin SV, and also on Vitalik Buterin, they don't. There is a dichotomy of view of conception of individuals wanting to be free and to do things alone by themselves and the state. And Jean-Henri Morin is a professor at Geneva University, which I worked with on our lexicon. He's trying to have a project of implementing legal regulations into decentralized world, such as everybody can vote to accept that particular rule and that particular. It's a complete new sociological project. And then, yeah, sorry to be a little bit philosophical, but I think we're always going to have a problem from the state wanting to control everyone. And there is a reason for that, because they don't want to lose tax substance. They want to make sure that it's not only to protect individuals or investors, it's also to make sure that there is no revenue or there is no money that escapes the state. But yeah.
Well, that's I guess that's certainly one part of it. If that was the only part of it, I think it would be more easily solved for, certainly in the U.S. The U.S. seems to be extremely focused on systemic risk. Gary Gensler was basically fashioned as a chair of the CFTC based on what he promised to bring with regards to management of systemic risk. And probably that also fed into the same basis for him now being at the SEC. He's truly the first SEC commissioner or chair that has been basically fashioned from this aversion to systemic risk. And I guess the question is, do the regulators in Switzerland have that same focus on systemic risk, or
yes.
Is it more like the revenue basis or other things that they're focusing on? And again, systemic risk in the context of macro and sort of, almost at the central banking level, where you're sort of thinking across broader swaths of the economy and less direct, more indirect, I would say.
Yeah, but we're not connecting this to DeFi, right? When you talk about systemic risk, do you consider in the US, do people consider that there is a systemic risk on the DeFi use by the population?
I think there's a lot of over anticipation of systemic risk. So the Federal Reserve, for example,
centralized concept,
right? But no, the Federal Reserve specifically published a paper with regards to DeFi risks and systemic risks featuring prominently.
Yeah.
And even in France, you had the Central Bank of France publishing a recent piece regarding largely systemic risk-based. And
BIS also.
Yes, BIS.
But it's a centralized.
And FSB.
It's centralized argumentation. They cannot do anything else. They're trying to make traditional argumentation on systemic risk fit into something they're afraid. And I'm saying this as being completely agnostic. I'm saying this as being factual and observing the reaction of states on the DeFi effect. Because I really don't think there is any systemic risk at all per nation from the DeFi ecosystem. And to come back to what you said, of course, Switzerland is very concerned by systemic risk. The US are not better or faster or more concerned than anyone else, especially not in Switzerland, after what happened with the Credit Suisse, for example. So that's why I was asking you, I don't see any direct correlation between DeFi and systemic risk.
What I was really endeavoring to understand was the uniquely Swiss perspective on DeFi and systemic risk. Certainly, that's a topic that's becoming much more in a focal point in the U.S. As well. So let's talk a little bit about the licensing. I know we touched upon the licensing process or the types of licenses. When a prospective client comes to you, Olivier and Lars, and they're looking to fashion their business as we'll call it the CASP or VASP equivalent in Switzerland, how do you typically advise them in terms of their considerations in the process?
So if I start, I'll be very well interested to see Lars completing and finishing on the topic, because
then you're starting.
Yeah, well, up to you. No, up to you.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I've seen probably 74 startup or 75 startup in the 3 years when I was attorney specialized in that. And you've seen different categories of people. You've seen people trying to use the system, sometimes in a fraudulent manner, having an ID to not adding anything new, or not using blockchain for any particular reason, or trying to. So I've seen fraud, of course. I sometimes see people that don't know exactly what they want to do. I've seen people telling me, I want to make sure that my token is a utility. I want to make sure. They don't understand that what they want to do is not a utility. So it always starts with a big discussion on what exactly do they want to do. The so-called white paper process, very important points that are sometimes lacking. I've seen recently, I'm recently into a project where I received a 15 PowerPoint presentation. You cannot base a regulatory process like a token qualification memo based on documentation like that. A white paper should probably be at least 20 pages long with some technical aspects separated. If it's a yellow paper, you need to see the involvement of the team, you need to see the project, you need to see the timeline, you need to see the cost, you need to see what is the question, what do they want to solve, what is the problem, what is the solution. So many things people sometimes don't realize that what they do is basically some kind of a prospectus, a big report on what they want to do, which they are liable. So that me as an attorney, I can put my name and I can be liable of the qualification of the token that I'm going to do, because I'm liable to that towards FINMA, because I'm putting my name on it. So that's consideration from the legal aspect. I don't know if you want to talk about costs or about whatever. Yeah, there is probably 5 considerations, legal aspects to take care into a blockchain project. Does it cover intellectual property? Does it cover a GDPR or data protection of physical individuals? Is it going to be financial? Is it going to be AML? What is the aspect from a contractual perspective when you purchase a token? And tax considerations, of course, very important as well. And then I said financial services or financial legislation. But no, Lars needs a bigger parallel time now, time of speech.
No, look, Olivier, honestly, I can only underline what you said. When I meet a client the first time, before speaking of what kind of authorization you need, I normally do a workshop. And during this workshop, I want to understand what the client wants to achieve. Because by using blockchain, I always say it's a little bit like Lego. I can do the construction in another way and being authorized, and in another way and not being authorized. So let's see. Of course, everybody doesn't want to be authorized, but if you are not authorized, normally the attractiveness of your token, of your project will suffer. So we try to find the best way out of it. So if we can build it without authorization, fine. Normally, the only authorization that you need is this for money laundering, as we were saying, and you need to go to this process for the self-regulated body. But this is something, honestly, not so complicated, and everybody should be able to obtain this authorization. If you need a film authorization, then things start to be hard. You have, I will say, two kinds of film authorization that normally we work on. One is the fintech authorization, this 1B authorization, which Olivier was speaking last time, where it allows you to do the custody of fiat and crypto up to 100 million. Or the DLT authorization if you want to do a secondary market for security tokens.
When you say do a secondary market, what do you mean? Do you want to offer, or you want to?
No, let's put it this way. If I want to offer my own security token, then I don't need a film authorization for me offering the token. I need a prospectus for the token because I'm offering the token. If I want to set up a platform which its role is to professionally offer security token of third parties to the public, then I am a broker and I need a FINMA approval. And that is primary market. And if I want to...
Multilateral, consider the difference between multilateral and bilateral. Basically, I think if it's multilateral, you need a DLT trading facility. In short.
If it's if it's primary or secondary. I mean, you can see also multilateral or unilateral.
Didn't mean to interrupt, though, Lars. Sorry.
And voila. But at the end of the story, these are the authorizations that you may need to have if you want to do crypto business in Switzerland. Money laundering, to 90% sure that you need this authorization, or fintech or DLT, depending if you want to do security or not security.
With MiCA now on its way to final adoption, how does your guidance to prospective and existing clients change? What do you tell them in terms of like the way that their authorizations in Switzerland can readily integrate into the MiCA framework, or vice versa?
That's a very good question. The reality is that we don't know yet, because
I was looking for something better than that.
Well, no.
The point is that we still need some regulation, because we have the MiCA is out, yes, but the regulation for the implementation of MiCA are still not published, so we don't know how they will request this tech. But I am pretty sure that all the projects which are issuing a token in Switzerland, they will need to have also a MiCA head. So they will probably need to have someone in Europe which will represent them and be the point of contact for the European market.
And there are clues also. If the euro is not the currency of your project, although you can say it has a value in European euro, if you are not touching any jurisdiction, if you're not having any effect, I don't say it's practical, it's easy practically, but let's say if you would have a token project that is only available to Swiss individuals or people domiciled in Switzerland, you might probably issue caveats or guidelines also on a website with a tick the box to make sure that MiCA doesn't apply. Theoretically, I think it's possible, but I would not, as Lars said, I would not jump into that too quickly without having regulation of the final text is known, but any regulation or rules that are going to be on top of MiCA, which is MiCA now with an R. So
yeah, I think the pronunciation is going to take a while to get right, but yeah, I've started now. Mikar, that's right.
Mikar, yeah.
Oh, I think in Europe there is people say Micah, also they say Mika, also they say Mikar. I mean, there is not a real unity.
Where is my car? Where did I park?
Exactly. It's you can make it more confusing. So I'm sure you're having clients come to you irrespective and sort of saying, what are your thoughts? And for example, like I think under my car, there is a grandfather period, and if you are able to implement a framework substantially, I'll say in line with my car, like as a CASP or otherwise, I believe that that your path, like that jurisdiction grandfathering can occur, I guess, right away. Like, in other words, you could basically be registered as a CASP, let's say in France, and then once my car is formally implemented, that authorization you would be, I'll say automatically, and you can correct me because I'm not a my car expert. I didn't even pronounce it right. I didn't have the R. But once my car is in effect, that authorization, that licensing as a CASP, you would be able to operate within the my car framework. I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some clients may say, may look at the Swiss framework and try to contemplate which jurisdiction would be the easiest in the EU to sort of port a lot of the controls that they had, et cetera, within the Swiss framework to become a licensed CASP in the EU. I mean, is that logical? Like, in other words, like if you had an existing framework, you would endeavor to apply it to the one that was the most synergistic to what you had already developed, theoretically, or perhaps where a regulator might even say, "Oh, okay, you're a registered provider in Switzerland, and thus, in granting the authorization, what have you, we're going to give some element of deference to that." Do you envision something like that, or is it still too soon? I'm sure you're probably thinking that way because a number of your clients are going to be thinking, okay, how do we take the what we've developed in Switzerland and extend it to the integration with my car?
I think, Eric, we still have not to forget that Switzerland is a very good place to issue token worldwide. So, of course, Europe is the neighbor of Switzerland, and we have to comply with Europe legislation. But I think that many people coming in Switzerland for issuing the token do it not because they want to sell the token in Europe, but because they want to sell the token in the world, and that's remain valid as a basis point. As you say, MiCA will have an impact on Swiss project that want to issue the token from Switzerland. For sure, we have to still analyze a little bit which one there will be. And I think that we will also do a little bit of forum shopping. So we will choose the best country where to put our representative and to comply with the European law. I doubt that we will use some of the big countries which are a little bit not so crypto friendly, but even in Europe we have a lot of countries which are more open to crypto than others, and probably these countries are the best one to go to comply then with MiCA once you have a project from Switzerland.
Yeah, and if I may add to that, I've been working with Liechtenstein a lot in the past. And you can have a project in Switzerland and asking for an e-money license through Liechtenstein. Also, geographically, it's not very far away. So, I mean, there's always a way to. I totally agree with Lars that from a token perspective, issuance, it's a great jurisdiction. And I don't say this on a patriotic way, but it's true that to apply for any MiCA regulation because you have to be compliant, then Liechtenstein or Luxembourg might be a good choice, probably. Generally, small jurisdictions tend to act faster. You can also, in 1 mile, walk between the regulator of the bank, the service provider, the notary, and the lawyer. So it's very practical. And I would rather go with Luxembourg or Liechtenstein than with Gibraltar, for example. But that's just in addition to what Lars said. Yes.
Excellent. So we touched on AML KYC requirements a bit. I know there's been some recent changes to the AML regime. Do you want to, Lars, provide sort of a little bit more detail on the anti-money laundering regime and Know Your Customer?
Yes, let's say that as I said many times, when you issue a token from Switzerland, probably the money laundering registration affiliation is the only authorization you really need. Now the point is, okay, what I have to do to comply with money laundering legislation in Switzerland? Well, you have to identify your client, but you have to identify it according to the law. So we have a law in Switzerland which describes the process that you have to do to identify your clients. And the law also make a distinction if you identify the clients by meeting him, which is not the case in most crypto business, or if you do it at distance with video identification or online identification. So mainly my clients use online identification, some use video identification. It depends also if you use fiat or not, because if you accept fiat money, then if you do the online, you have to get a payment from a bank. And if you want to change crypto to crypto, you have a problem. Then you have to do the video identification, because you cannot. At the moment in Switzerland, you cannot use online identification if you just want to use to do an operation crypto to crypto for money laundering. Then there are the thresholds that are interesting, because the law states that you don't have to identify your clients if you stay below 1,000 Swiss francs. Now, first mistake that a lot of people does, even if you don't have to identify your clients, you still have to register to a self-regulated organization. So I know that there are some companies here in Switzerland which are saying, "Oh, come to me, I sell Bitcoin up to 1,000 Swiss francs without KYC," and they are not subject to the self-regulated body. They will get a problem if FINMA code them. And the second, what is this 1,000 threshold? Is 1,000 per day? Is 1,000 per week? Is 1,000 per month? The law doesn't state that. Let's say that to be on the safe side, we always say it's 1,000 per month. And honestly, I see that the self-regulated body are also pushing for this interpretation of the law. So you say 1,000 Swiss francs per month, you can exchange it without doing the KYC, but you have to be registered as a self-regulated body, because they will control that they really need only 1,000 per month and not more. And if you are above this threshold, then you have to identify the clients according to the circular. So requesting all the documents, which is the usual documents that everybody uses.
So, and how does the identification compare with like the U.S.? Like, is it
Look, there is. I think that let's put it this way. You know that money laundering legislation in reality is done by a international body, which is the FATF. Yeah. So the principles are the same for everybody. Maybe not for the US, because I know that you have a lot of clients which don't identify the beneficial owner. So that is maybe something that is a little bit different. But in Switzerland, maybe also for historical reasons, since we had the banking secrecy and all this stuff, we have from the 70s a particular form that there is not on the other part of the world, which is the Form A. We call it the Form A. Then there are many, because there is also the Form T and the Form R and the Form Y. There is many of these forms. But this Form A is just the form for the beneficial owner. So when you're opening a banking account in Switzerland, you open it on your name, and then you have to sign on a particular form, and it must be this form that you are the beneficial owner of this account. And if you want to do it, since we have to transpose this system also in the crypto space, you see that we have a difference is that we need to have this form A, which in reality is not complicated to do because we have just to put a TAN code on the platform, and the platform will confirm that these are our own assets and that we are the beneficial owner. But it's a step more that we have if compared to the other legislation. And that is something maybe that makes Switzerland a little bit less attractive, and that we have to discuss also inside Switzerland if we want to keep this Form A, because again, it's just really a Swiss finish. There isn't anything similar on the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world, you just ask the client to confirm that he's the beneficial owner, but you don't have to use a specific formula for that.
Right, and we're going to shift gears and ask about the Swiss foundations.
Yes.
What's the role of Swiss foundations, and why are they are they advantageous for DAOs? We talked a little bit about DAOs in Switzerland. Olivier, do you want to lead that? Or
yeah, sure. Well, it's a common traditional subject. Lars could very well do it as well. So you have a legal entity when you have a foundation. You have a capital that has to be ready into a bank account when you have to have a capital that has to be spent. The idea of the foundation is to spend that money for a purpose. And for that reason, it serves very well the idea to give something for a particular purpose or to give something to the world. For example, the Ethereum was created in Switzerland by a colleague of ours, Lars and I, in 2014, was to create a foundation to give the protocol to the world, but then to do a cooperation in order to make sure to receive the commission and the gas applied to the deployment of smart contracts within the blockchain. So it always, and in comparison to simple partnership, as we were discussing before, which is a way to go together for a common goal, with no legal entity per se, because there is no capital and there is no capital liability. The idea of the foundation is to it can be used. I mean, the DAO would be qualified, I think, from a legal perspective, and we're not going to do legal analysis now, but it would be easily qualifiable to be qualified as a simple partnership, société French, because the ideal is common, but the difference is that you could have members that have different rights, which you can also in the simple partnership, but it can evolve, and you can have new members at any time in a DAO environment, for example. So foundation is useful for setting up a purpose, and together with the corporation, for example, if you do commercial activity. Because if you have a foundation, you should not have a commercial activity, because if you have a commercial activity, you are not going to be tax exonerated. And the purpose for you to set up a foundation is because you want to have a tax exoneration. So also you have to consider that you might have various capital requirements. Sometimes foundations exist with any blocked account when it's set up by the notary. So you have to go in front of a notary because it's a legal entity. So the capital can vary. Lars, correct me. It depends the canton. You're doing it from 10K to 50K if it has federal implication or if it's only cantonal. So yeah, it's still used, but your question being, are they an advantage in comparison to DAO, or just the role of Swiss Foundation in the digital asset ecosystem? If you can orient me again, Eric, on the
so
topic.
Yeah, so they are an often used construct in digital asset for digital asset projects, specifically DAOs. In the U.S., oftentimes Cayman is a very popular jurisdiction for foundation formation with an issuance out of BVI. But the foundation itself can be structured memberlessly with an independent director and can simply facilitate the vote of a DAO and then delegate authority accordingly.
Oh, yeah.
But if you ask me, honestly, in the practice, in the case that I had, we didn't use a foundation, but we use an association. With the association, you can. It's more like to the DAO, since you everyone can vote. So if you have the governance token and you want to vote, then with the association, you can really participate directly to the vote into the association, and your vote counts. So you cannot say that, I have to follow the vote of the DAO. No, the DAO is the mechanism where I vote inside the association. So the only problem of using an association is that per law, the association, you have one man, one vote. And normally when you have DAO, you want to give more votes to the people who have more tokens. But there are ways where we can manage this by creating different voting pools. The problem with the foundations, in my opinion, is that many person doesn't understand that the foundation does not to make, the scope of the foundation cannot be to make gains. The scope of the foundation is to support the protocol. And if you do your own foundation for your protocol, and then you want the foundation to pay you for the law and for the work that you're doing in favor of the protocol, it's not working. The Foundation Supervision Authority will come and say that you're in a conflict of interest and that you cannot work for your own, for the foundation that you set up, because you are in a conflict. So the foundation works only if you want to play it correctly. That means you will never, ever have to do with the foundation again if you establish the foundation. And the people inside the foundation council member, they will work for getting the scope of the foundation, which is the application of the protocol worldwide. Finish. So the foundation is not to making money. Let's put it this way.
It's a very good point that Lars made. I want to add something. It's true that Ethereum was created by a foundation and an LLC on one side, but it's true too that Libra created in Geneva with an association and also various LLCs. So it's totally true that for the purpose of the DAO, and I made an introduction to the foundation without linking to the DAO, and that's probably my mistake. Totally agree with Lars. The problem, though, is on the digital ecosystem and on the blockchain space, the quality of member of the DAO can go faster than the paperwork, if you wish me to say so, of the entry as a member of the association. It can also be digital, but it's much more, association can rule itself in many more ways. It's much more liberal. The right on association on law is in Swiss law is very liberal. With the limits, as Lars said, that an association can make profit because it can have an economical goal, but it doesn't have a legal entity by the fact that it doesn't have a capital. But there can be liabilities for the members or for the le conseil de direction, the governing body. So it applies better for DAOs. Yeah, as a member of an association, you also have to challenge the decision that has been made by the association or by the board through Article 75 of Swiss law of association. So you have rights to challenge what the directory body of the association is doing.
So it sounds like the association addresses the fluidity of membership better, right? Right. Yeah. In the U.S., we have a construct called UAs or UNAs, unincorporated nonprofit associations. The nonprofit just means your primary purpose isn't to make profit, but it has also it's similarly fluid in terms of its membership. So it's and it's relatively easy to set up. Of course, it's in the U.S. That's the big problem. Let's talk a moment about the Financial Services Act and its relevance to digital assets. Lars, you want to touch on that?
Yes, so the Financial Services Act, which is the Swiss MiFID, if you want. So it's applied to securities at the end of the story. So if you want to sell your security token when you have your prospect, well, you have also to assure that the person purchasing your securities has they understand the risk of purchasing such a security. So these apply, of course, to financial intermediaries. So if a financial intermediary want to purchase securities issued by third party, and honestly, we are already seeing that with the time we have more and more and more financial products which are issued on the blockchain, and therefore the Financial Services Act will apply more and more and more to this product. So at the end of the story, it's nothing new because this is something that we already applying to the traditional financial instruments. But we have to remember that when we tokenize these instruments, well, this law does also apply to tokenize a financial instrument, and that you have to do the suitability and the appropriateness in all these tests which are required by the Financial Service Act.
Great. So we're going to hit the sort of last 3 points, and we're going to talk about the. Olivier is going to take the position of selling why Switzerland is a phenomenal place to locate your digital asset business. Lars is going to follow with the challenges and risks that digital asset businesses have in Switzerland. Sorry, you don't get the happy face. You get the frowny face. Well, Olivier gets the happy face, and then we'll talk about just overall Swiss impressions of what's going on in the U.S. Regulatory and political landscape as it relates to digital assets. So I gave you a little bit of a heads up here on this. So we'll start off. Olivier, pitch on the why projects should locate in Switzerland their digital asset projects.
Okay, so there's the common grounds that are really accepted by again not being patriotic here, but there is the financial stability of Switzerland. The geographical situation is probably least of advantage. The political stability, the quality of the services, the quality of the formation from a university perspective, general education of people, a very long tradition of wealth management, banking systems, trading facilities, advice. Very good, and very old tradition of quality of professional advice, be it financial, be it legal. And we're not bragging here, but it is really serious. I've compared that on a slow scale, but I'm kind of proud of that. And then, of course, there is, and I'm sure Lars is going to try to destroy the system. I don't know how he's going to do it, but there is a way that is very particular to Switzerland. We talked about it before, is that we have not designed a specific blockchain legislation, which has positive aspects too, because we plug people within their project to what already exists, which works in terms of surveillance, in terms of setup, in terms of we're not going to talk about tax. I'm not a professional tax advisor, but there is also the capital gain tax now is going to be equal pretty much everywhere, around 40%. So it's not so much an issue, but there might be some other issues. So, and then there is this, your project is plugged, and then it's plugged directly on an AML aspect. If you are going into financial intermediation, producing inducements or financial interest for your clients, and then you are going to apply for one particular a license based on a token qualification memo or on a project memo that has to be done by professional lawyers. I think nowadays in 2023 there are good firms and good professional lawyers to be able to help you in that. Lars and I being some of them, very old ones though. It's been a long time we're there. No, basically that's pretty much it. The possibility also to apply for EU money or other other legislative requirements easily from within Switzerland. The language, everybody speaks English as well, of course. Trying to find some other positive aspects. So,
all right, we'll give you a chance to rebut. We'll give you a chance to rebut Lars when he does his takedown.
A big ecosystem. A big ecosystem.
All right, Lars, I'm putting you in the uncomfortable position. What are the challenges and risks for digital assets businesses in Switzerland?
Well, unfortunately for me, Switzerland is not only a paradise, and we have some challenges. So I will say the first challenges of it all is that it's not because you're issuing a token from Switzerland that you don't have to comply with the other jurisdiction. So if you are selling the token in the US, if you're selling the token in the EU, we have discussed it, the local jurisdiction legislation applies. So that's why many of my projects, even if we sell the tokens, we don't allow US person to purchase these tokens. And in the future, we will have to comply also with the MiCA regulation. Then in Switzerland, don't think that we are not regulated. We are regulated, and FINMA may be a very, I would say, a very hard authority if they want. As we say during the podcast, FINMA has also the right to close your business down. So if you issue a token and you didn't comply with the law, there is no middle solution. You really risk that they close everything down and they liquidate your project, which is honestly a little bit pity if you are starting something very good and you make a small mistake and now they're closing everything. Then, as I told, I think that the money laundering scheme that we have in Switzerland is a little bit above for what it concerns the formal approach, above the threshold of if we compare with the other countries, and therefore it makes a little bit more difficult to people who want to comply, want to do the KYC in Switzerland to do it. We have more step than the other project, and that may be a limit to the Swiss legislation. For me, that are the main three risks, honestly, that we have in Switzerland. For the rest, I mean, Olivier, we are here. We know that we are considered a crypto-friendly country because we are really crypto-friendly. So I think many of my clients are always amazed when I told them and I show them that we can go to our regulator and discuss with them. And even if I receive a negative approach, a negative reply, and we receive negative reply from FINMA, we can still go to them and tell them, okay, look, then if you don't like this, we change it like this and we change it like that. Can you now confirm that so it's fine? And they come back and say yes. So this is something that I think it's really one of the main points positive for Switzerland.
Sorry, that exists.
Thank you.
I just wanted to confirm that actually exists. So it's like, okay, sorry.
No. I would say thank you, Lars, to do my part of the job. But I'll rebut in his favor maybe after. But go, Eric.
What is the European, Swiss, even personal perspective of you with regards to the political and regulatory landscape in the U.S. as it relates to digital assets? Like, I often wonder, just how, specific countries, specifically Switzerland, which borrowed, to Olivier's point before, borrowed, some of its interpretations from the U.S. originally, SEC originally, to now witness this sort of swing in the pendulum and the Swiss perspective on that.
Well,
so go ahead.
No,
go ahead, Lars.
Okay. I think that now FINMA has its own perspective. So it's they really get a lot of cases. We have issued a lot of tokens. They were able to discuss a great number of projects, and they have now established their own practice, and they are following this practice. So I don't think that what is happening in the US is influencing this practice. Again, don't think that FINMA is too open. It's open to crypto project, yes, but it's applying the law. So if you are a security, They will tell you you're a security, you need a prospect, you need to comply with the law. And the law are more or less the same in the United States. The difference is that we can have non-security token in Switzerland. I mean, if you design the token correctly, that you can get the decision that this is not a security token, and I think that FINMA will stay in with this approach also in the future.
And if I can add to that, what I said before as regards Switzerland copying the SEC as to the qualification of the payment token, asset token, and utility token is just because it made sense, because just the SEC was the first to have to do the exercise because of the DAO 1.0, the DAO project, which was the first like a decentralized collective investment scheme ID, which started in Switzerland. I think also something to be said after the FTX scandal or after the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. We can, in Switzerland, we can say also that the regulator did not play very well its role as regards Credit Suisse, because they should have. So now I'm going to do the rebuttal on the favor of Lars. I think just very quickly on the Credit Suisse, I think, and what implication it has in the blockchain space. Don't forget that we have a two-speed surveillance. I think FINMA would have never tried to destroy a too-big-to-fail bank like Credit Suisse. But if you're a commercial bank and you do a mistake, you're going to be gone and you're going to be destroyed very quickly. I think it's weird because SBV was a small bank, and I don't think how the supervision works there. But in a small bank, which is not one of the largest in the country, it would have been into an enforcement procedure immediately in Switzerland. So I think from a European and Swiss perspective, we didn't understand why such a mistake occurred. From a surveillance perspective on the FTX, although I know FTX were based in the Bahamas, but still, I mean, the SEC has extraterritorial also prerogatives. And I don't understand how this could happen. And I think we don't understand very well also in Switzerland and Europe how a scandal like a Silicon Valley Bank also occurred. So that's, I think, to come back to one specific aspect of your question, as how do we see U.S. law, I think, or U.S. opportunities to build business. I think from a supervision perspective, it seems we are more educated now into the crypto business as to what to be careful about than from on a state level in the US, or still maybe on a federal level. It's not a direct attack. It's still it raises question. How did this happen?
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, what you do?
Lars, well, they just have to go to my webpage, which is lexify.io, and they will not hear the children playing, which is very nice, but they will see what we do and have my contacts and able to contact me for any additional question.
And as for me, for practical and private mandates or for any other legal considerations that are outside of my work, is to go to the cdbf.ch website, cdbf.ch/lexique, LEXIQUE, and where you're going to find my bio and when you can get in touch with me, and also on for the time being on my private email, which is Olivier.Depierre, OLIVIER.DEPIERRE @bluewin.ch, which is BLUEWIN.ch.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast, giving me your time and explaining, going through the Swiss approach to digital assets. It was a pleasure.
Our pleasure, Eric. Nice day. Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye.